So I left you hanging between uh, videos or audios. So um, Paul Hulk was born prematurely by a cesarean section. 3 hours later, Gabrielle's heart was removed and transplanted into Paul's chest. And this was the first time that a transplant from an anencephalic baby to another infant resulted in a baby who would now grow up and lead a normal life. So the Hulks named their baby Paul Gabrielle Bailey Hulk. So the Gabrielle after the donor and the Bailey after the doctor. There was a movie about this case, Heart of a Child, in 1994. Paul does make a brief appearance with the actual Karen Schouten, who was Gabrielle's mom, and he's become at the time he was became known as the Incredible Hulk. He was there had been a couple of reports of where he is and how he's doing. He was one report he was in 1998 that he was 13. He was doing well. In 2011, there was an interview with Karen Schouten about this case, and she said that she had heard that he was 23 and living in Vancouver, Canada, and that he was a mechanic in Canada. I did a little bit of investigating and actually found who has to be Paul Hulk on Facebook, and this is him and his family. And I say it has to be because he was in an automotive mechanic in Canada. He had the listed as a family member was Alice Hulk, same name as his mom. Same, he's from the same area, and there are a couple of comments on his timeline that refer to being. There's one that refers to him as being number 9 in Loma Linda. So too many connections for it not to be him. So this is Paul currently, or at least whenever, Paul Hulk and his wife and his son. So thought that was interesting to do. See a little where are they now. There's not a lot of information about what he's doing now or anything. There's no publicity related to him, but putting the pieces together, that has to be him. Um, so, you know, uh, the another case that was important in terms of this topic is baby Teresa, and this was 1992. In 91, again, another unmarried mom, Laura Campo, and her boyfriend, Justin Pearson, conceived a child. And like baby Faye's mom, Laura had no medical insurance and she didn't see a physician until her 24th week of pregnancy. It was during her 8th month of pregnancy that she learned that her baby was anencephalic. Because of that diagnosis and because it was made so late in her pregnancy, and because her health was not in danger from the fetus, she could not get a legal abortion. So she said, had she known earlier, she would have aborted the baby. But after hearing a talk show about organ donation from anencephalic babies, she decided to have the baby. Because these babies are likely to have swollen heads at birth, and they can die through a vaginal delivery, she also underwent a cesarean section to try to keep the organs healthy for transplantation. So it was possible at that point, and since around 1968, it's been possible to use these anencephalic organs as sources. In 92, so Campo had her baby girl and named her Teresa Ann Campo Pearson, and she took pictures, and she had pictures of a beautiful baby, and she was wearing a pink knitted cap that covered top of her head. And when the cap was removed, it revealed the brainstem and inside a partial skull. So Under Florida law, which is where they live, Teresa's organs could be donated, but she had to be brain dead. So again, similar to the Ontario standard, there was something called the Harvard standard. And unless Teresa was brain dead, no one would be able to remove her organs. So the parents went to a judge and asked the judge to rule Teresa brain dead. The judge ruled against the couple, saying that she was unable to authorize someone to basically take the baby's life. However short and unsatisfactory that baby's life might be, she wasn't going to authorize someone to take that life to save another child. And she stated that death was not an option. So the couple appealed to the Florida District Court of Appeals, which affirmed the previous judge's decision. The baby started to experience organ failure, and at this point, the neonatologist told the parents that all they were doing was prolonging the baby's death. They removed the respirator, and Teresa died the next day. And by then, they weren't able to use her organs. So the parents then started to appear on television to try to plead for a change in Florida's laws regarding brain death. Even though baby Teresa died, the Florida Supreme Court decided not to change the law and that anencephalic newborns should not be considered dead for the purpose of organ donation. Okay, there are also a lot of cases that occur where twins conjoin at birth or separated in long surgeries, and the media cover these cases extensively, and they really kind of bolster up the surgeon who separates the twins. But what is often forgotten in the process is that the surgeon is responsible in essence, and the parents have to make this decision, that it's often a result of sacrificing one of the children, one of the conjoined twins, to create a single person. So one of those such cases was Angela and Amy Lakeberg, and this was in 1993. Amy died because as a result of the surgery. They were twins, they were conjoined, but Amy ended up being sacrificed for Angela to be able to live. So separating conjoined twins, and particularly when they're adults, are often can be kind of a reach for fame by the hospital or by the surgical team, ultimately, resulting in the potential for them to get funding, get attention, start new programs, whatever it is. It kind of lionizes the cases and the surgeons, and you hear phrases like the twins are, brave little fighters, the surgeons are called heroes, the hospital is doing what's medically necessary. You have to think about whether this is actually true, and we'll talk about the ethical issues on both sides in a couple minutes. But I did want to point out that one person whose name may be familiar from Johns Hopkins Hospital was Ben Carson, who became famous in 1987 for successfully separating German twins who were joined at the head and sharing part of the same brain. And since that point, he's written several books about his surgeries and his experiences. He's had both successes and failures at separating twins, and actually in one of the presidential debates, he touted himself as the only candidate who had successfully separated conjoined twins, which apparently made him qualified to run for president. There are other ethical issues involved with using a baby, or the topic of using a baby or a child for another child. One is, whether it's appropriate to use animals for the health of babies. Should we, in the case of people like Baby Faye, be able to use the heart of the baboon? Who's to say that it was right to kill the baboon, Goobers, did Goobers not have the right to a life as much as Baby Faye did? So really, were there two victims? Why was the baboon's life worth less than the baby who might not have survived anyway? So, that's the argument that comes from animal rights activists and others. Were there alternative treatments versus the research potential? In the Baby Faye case, what they found was that there was the opportunity for a human donor heart. Loma Linda at the time said that the xenograph was the only thing possible, but what they found was that there actually would have been possible to get a donor heart, and in fact, an infant heart had become available on that day of Baby Faye's xenograph. But they said that because they had already committed to this, that they decided to go through with it. So, there was a question as to whether the Loma Linda team made a valiant effort to be able to get a human heart because they were so committed to doing this surgery with the baboon. And in fact, Bailey agreed. Bailey admitted that they didn't look for a human heart. And there was another alternative. There was also the potential for doing a different type of surgery. At this point, a pediatric surgeon had developed the surgery for this specific heart condition that attempted to repair the left ventricle, and he had performed the surgery many times with a 40% success rate, which is much better than the success rate of xenografts. Bailey claimed that the children didn't do well enough after the Norwood procedure to justify the operation for Baby Faye, but is he really partial enough to make that claim given his interest at that time in xenografts? So also think, are there alternatives for conjoined twins? What's the alternative? Well, there are some that live life without the separation. That leads to the, that ethical question. Why do we need to separate them? They can live and grow into adulthood. There have been some that have lived typical lives, gotten married, had children, despite being conjoined at the waist, some, at the head. They often claim that they don't need to be separated when they are able to get to the adulthood. They don't necessarily feel trapped or confined by their conjoinment. So what are we assigning to these individuals? We're assigning an assumption that they can't live a worthy life, so we have to separate them. So that's another one of the issues that arises. We don't really know what the long-term survival rate is for some of them, depending on where they're conjoined, because there have been so few, but we're making the assumption that anything is better than living as a conjoined twin. So is surgery better, and what is the resulting quality of life? What if oftentimes you are sacrificing one or the other? How is life for the one that is able to survive versus the loss of a twin? So that can be another issue that has to be dealt with. Another issue is the use of using babies as subject as research. So, Bailey used Baby Faye as a research. She couldn't consent, although the parents did. Were they truly informed of everything that they needed to be informed of? Did they know about the potential alternative treatments that were available? And would they have given their consent had they been?